Hey, how's it going?
Hey everyone. Hi, I'm Andrea Woodbridge.
And I am Chris Barker, and this is Sunday Night Indies. For our premiere show, we've got filmmaker JP DeGennaro in studio, and we're going to screen his film, Life Unrequited, and ask him a few questions about it. But first, Andrea and I are both fortunate enough to watch a few films showing at the Sundance Film Festival and over the past few days, and we'd love to tell you about a few of them. But before we get started, I'm going to tell you about a contest we're having tonight. At some point, I'll say a quote from a movie, and the first one to put the right answer in our comment section gets some free iconic Rocket swag. We're giving out a free T-shirt this evening. They're at the presses as we speak, so to get one, you'll be able to say that you're one of the cool kids in town. So with that, let's talk Sundance with Andrea.
Hey, okay. So the standout film for me was the series 4 Feet High, which was about an Argentinian teenager who's wheelchair bound. She's got weakness in her arms and all of her muscles, so she needs a lot of help. But the film actually resisted the urge to focus on her physical limitations, and it actually focused more on her sexual awakening and that of her peers. And she ends up experiencing all sorts of things any teenage girl might, including like fitting into a new school and having a pregnancy scare. So I feel like the film used the vehicle of the student body, demanding proper sex education at their school, which I found was really interesting because that's a big cultural difference from what you would find in the United States. The main themes of the show were, for me, revolution, sexual awakening, and friendship. So, and like feeling as though one fits in with their peers, which is really important, not just in school, but in life in general. So I really enjoyed how they combined those themes, to move the story along. And the cinematography and the sound were all great, and it was a well-rounded and well put together series.
Cool. Any others that you liked?
Another favorite of mine was Mountain Cat, which took place in Mongolia. This was focused again on a young woman with a disability, but hers was not visible as she has a heart condition. And her mother has repeatedly sought the help of shamans around the country. And she's asking the shamans for reassurance that the foreign surgery she's going to have for her daughter is going to work. So basically, once the shaman is out of his shaman gear, he's just a normal person, and the young woman actually approaches him outside of the hut when they're up on the mountain. And so I thought this film really got to the essence of religion and how individuals turn to it into mysticism in order to find like a particular answer that they're seeking. Reassurance, even though the guy can't probably really give them what they're looking for. So I thought it was very insightful, had stunning views of the Mongolian countryside, of the hills and mountains. And I liked the way that it kind of pits the idea of like shamanistic religion against that of humanism almost, and the girl's exploration of that. So I really enjoyed that film as well.
All right. So we're not going to talk about In the Air Tonight. Is that what we're saying?
Not tonight, but we welcome if they would like to come here and share their film with us, as always.
So there's this Phil Collins song from back in the day called In the Air Tonight. And I think these days it's mainly heard in beer commercials. And there's this urban legend surrounding what Phil Collins saw that night when he wrote the song. And I don't know if JP even's heard of this song. He's probably heard of it. But I guess people at parties come up with their version of what Phil saw. And this one filmmaker decided to make a short film with his version. And you had the instruments first. If you heard the song, it's a really cool song. Got atmospheric music. And then Phil starts singing, I can feel it coming in the air tonight.
When are you dropping that CD?
Oh, Lord. Soon. But they have this thing going. You have it going. I know. I'm an awesome singer. And you're just kind of waiting. you're waiting for the bass to drop because that's the coolest part of the song. And
yeah, and they try to like the part of the storytelling is you're supposed to time it, right? So
yeah,
that the bass drops at the exact right time.
yeah. But on this one, the bass drop was they dropped something on screen that I don't know if I want to talk about right now. But it was very interesting, and maybe we'll get those guys on. That's all I'm going to say about that. Um, other things that I liked. Another film I liked, and I did see Mountain Cat. I thought it was really good. There was a film that was called Would You Rather, and Would You Rather was set up, and it was really it was a web series, and they really showed maybe all 9 or 10 episodes of the series, and basically it focused on these two girls that were maybe 15 or 16, and one had just gone to a new school, and they had both been kind of friends all their lives. And they played this game of Would You Rather, and the question started out fairly simply, like, would you rather have big, what was it?
A big butt or a big boobs?
Yeah, big butt or big boobs. And one picked one and one picked the other, and they started there. And the questions then got more and more personal each episode, and you could tell that the answers to some of the questions were actually tearing a hole in their relationship, and it was cool to see the arc. I thought it was well acted by such young actors. It was a foreign language film, but it was one that I would love to get here to at least show the first episode and see if there might be other folks who would like it like me, and then perhaps figure out how to see the rest of them. And you saw that one too, right, Andrea?
I did, and it sort of reminded me of like Stream of Consciousness, because the whole time it's very dialogue driven.
Yeah.
And I liked that, and it actually brought up for me just like really intense memories of like the joy and the intense pain of being a teenager and going through all that, and friendships just like turning precarious in a moment's notice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really a coming of age sort of series.
It was. So I liked that one. Another one I'd like to mention is a film called The Criminals, and that film was set in Turkey. You like that one? Yeah, it told the story of these two unmarried college students who really just wanted to get a room for the night, and unfortunately for them, it's 100% illegal to do so there.
Without being married, yes.
Without being married, yeah. And so they're out there, and they get turned down, and eventually they decide as a strategy to go into a hotel at separate times, book separate rooms, and then join each other later. Of course, the movie wouldn't be a movie if that fixed the problems, and it only got worse for the pair after that. The tension kept rising, the stakes kept getting larger and larger, and it really drew me in, and until it came to a very I thought good climax. I really bought into the story. You saw that one too, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, the climax was not the one the teenagers were hoping for. But yes, I really did like that one. Again, such a complete different culture from what we experience here, and I actually really liked the way that it worked out, the way that they stood up for themselves. So
they did. It was a good ending, and it's one of those that it wasn't a movie that you'll probably see, might not look for it, but if you do get a chance to see it as a short film, I would highly recommend it.
Oh, absolutely.
Another film I thought was interesting because of the premise was a short film called The Affected. And I won't tell all of it, but the premise was there's a plane leaving Switzerland for Afghanistan. And on that plane was a political prisoner who would be put to death when the plane landed. And one of the passengers on the plane realized that. And as a result, she refused to sit down so that the plane couldn't take off. She felt that by sitting down, she was somewhat complicit in the man's murder. I mean, he was a political dissident or something like that. Now, the film actually was set up as a comedy. And it never showed either the woman or the passenger in question, but it really focused in on the reactions of all the other women or all the other passengers on the plane, which were all over the place. And I won't tell you how the issue gets resolved, but I thought it was really a creative use of using the airplane and to call and using a short film to call attention to what is actually a real problem, which is people being sent back to their countries, knowing that they will die, and what can you do? I think in many cases people would say, well, what can I do about it? And this woman said if she just didn't sit down, she could do something. So what do you
I
think about
remember
that
that story in the news when it happened a few years back. And I thought there was a very interesting twist at the very end, which I'm not going to give away. But yeah, I agree. I didn't think much about it at the time, but now that you mention it, the way that they didn't show the man and they didn't show the woman that was objecting, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice too. I think I did watch one feature-length documentary just because we try to spend most of our time focusing on short films and web series because that's kind of our space. But I watched one feature-length documentary directed by the band leader of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, Questlove. The film was called The Summer of Soul, and it told the story of the Harlem Cultural Festival, which was a music festival that spanned 6 straight weekends in 1969. It was the same summer as Woodstock, but very few people heard of it. I thought it was an interesting film for today's time because 1969, as you know, was one of the more pivotal years in race relations. The country had just come off the assassinations of JFK, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, and Questlove, the director, used news footage and the festival's music to try to tie things together, give a sense for how people were feeling, and you could kind of look at those times and try to tie them to things happening today. So given some of the issues that happened in 2020 and that'll continue to happen, this turned out to be a very timely film. And when it shows up on Netflix or whatever, you should give it a watch. So,
well, I certainly will.
Yeah, it was pretty nice, I thought. I guess so. So with that, why don't we bring JP into the studio and see how he's doing?
Okay.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Hey,
JP.
how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you here with us this evening on Sunday Night Indies. Before we screen your film entitled A Life Unrequited, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a multimedia artist based in Seattle. I do a lot of different work in film and music, acting, visual arts. I kind of do a little bit of everything. So this was sort of some of my more beginning to explore film a little bit more seriously and kind of seeing where that can go.
All right.
Very, very good. So is there anything else, or is there anything in particular you'd like the audience to know when they watch your film, or anything you'd like them to focus on or think about?
Sure. So I guess I was just it's just a short 23-minute film kind of exploring my own sort of emotions during a period of my life. So yeah, it's pretty open to that. I really proud of, the whole thing, but I wrote a lot of music for it and I'm really excited about that. So.
Oh, very good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we love it. And why don't we get it up there now?
All right.
This was the part I was most worried about.
What happens to unrequited love? I wish it were easier for me to express my feelings instead of pushing them deep, holding my tongue, pushing pins inside my poor heart. But the heart is a strong organ, beating along, moving somewhere around 2,000 gallons of blood a day. This engine reliably works for me. So I want to honor it. I want to celebrate my beautiful heart. I see now that I have to heal it. And to heal means facing daggers. I think the hardest thing about losing you was how sure our being together felt to me. I was losing an entire future of possibilities, a future I had put so much stock in, had placed my entire identity in. And losing the partnership left me feeling like I had amputated a part of my body, even if I stubbornly didn't want to admit it to myself at the time. I've heard it said that the qualities we strongly admire in others are latent ones within ourselves. I've often sought out those I admire, modeling and adapting myself off of the people around me. I can see some folly to this now, can see a greater importance of developing my own personal voice and sense of self as a guiding light above all else. But before I knew how to look within for comfort, I found people outside of myself to make me feel comfortable expressing deeper parts of my soul, the parts I buried out of one security or another. Some smattering of senseless self-doubt that somehow inevitably brought me back to middle school, feeling awkward and antisocial. I no longer want to be insecure, but it's a hard habit to break, even if I know how to hide it well. Insecurity comes and goes in waves and periods. Some life phases have been worse than others. When it comes, it can ping and seethe inside. These childhood wounds can be the hardest to break. But I'm committed to my personal healing, and I've come so far, far too far to give up on myself now. Before I finally stop to face these feelings and traumas within me and find my inner strength, I searched outside of myself for security. And sometimes those feelings, those fears, could so easily be subsided with the comforting smile of a friend, the reassuring nudge of a kind person I felt secure with, someone I didn't need to put up a mask with, someone who could read me with a quick glance of acceptance, look fully at the pieces I couldn't imagine sharing, and say, "Oh, cool. You were one of those people for me." It felt so natural being in each other's company, like this was where I was supposed to be, like I could build my whole life off of those moments we spent together. And in a way, that's what we were doing. Two people coming together to make art. 2018 was one of the best years I've experienced in this life so far. And though many aspects of my day-to-day experience added to that, I think a large part came from the time we spent together, working on music. There was never any question between us, just an open flow into something larger than either one of us. I believed so thoroughly in the deep connection I was feeling in our creative sessions, and I could feel us tapping into something massive. The creative process can feel otherworldly. It can seem like this presence of being and doing and flowing that is so counter to the cultural systems we interact with day to day. And making music with you was the first time I ever shared that experience so intimately with another person. Maybe that's why I became so enamored with it all. Maybe that's why I became so enamored with you. I suppose the whys don't really matter. None of us can change the past, and honestly, I'm not sure I'd do it any differently if I had the chance. I knew I was starting to develop feelings for you around halfway into our music sessions. I thought I had more time. We were starting a band, and there was so much power in that music. I recently went back and listened to some of the sessions recorded to my phone, and there was really something there. I could feel the pull of it, could taste the magic of our songs. I thought we had time to make the music first, to start playing shows, to share it with others, and then after a time, I could share my feelings with you. But I guess the universe had other plans for the both of us. I can see now that the music was never enough for me, and I suppose it wasn't for you either. I can see now that the fantasy of our collective future shaping in my mind was ever only that, fantasy. It was the moments we shared together that meant something. They were the only thing that was real. To improvise is to be fully present in the moment, and I have a challenging time making music any other way. I think this frustrated you after a while. We couldn't re-spark the high points stumbled on in jam sessions. Structured work sessions never materialized beyond endless exploration. And when you were faced with the choice to continue with the project or to place your full energy into your job, you decided to drop it. I don't blame you. New York was calling your name, and who am I to hold a person back from their dreams? Maybe there was never any other outcome possible for us. I went to some pretty dark places after we stopped hanging out, and that's not something I blame on you. But it is a part of my story. And in order to heal, I have to express all of this. I was so confused for so long about why I was falling apart, about why my life was falling apart around me. But they say our inner and outer landscapes reflect one another. Where 2018 was one of the greatest years I've experienced, 2019 was one of the worst. When the music was over, my retreat into isolation became extreme. I was inspired at first. New music was coming to me, a new drive, a new direction. In my vision, I was hearing this complete sound. A synthetic orchestra exploded in my mind's eye, and I tried so hard to chase it down. And I pushed, and I could capture some things, but it never really felt enough. The sounds in my imagination couldn't be replicated. I hadn't processed my emotions from our project ending. I hadn't allowed myself to mourn the ending of my imagined outcome, and I told myself it was coming anyway. I completely abandoned the present moment and placed all of my feelings into the future. Push, push, push. Someday, eventually, when it comes out, when I'm living my dreams, once it becomes a thing. But it was never about that imagined outcome, and I can finally see that now. The important moments we shared together had absolutely nothing to do with my fantasy of touring the world, playing music with you, and had everything to do with sitting down at the keyboard or the bass, sharing my time with you once a week, and just letting the music flow in whatever way it needed to. I have a hard time expressing my feelings. and I learned at a very young age to avoid and ignore emotional pain in order to survive. This is something I'm working on healing within myself. The emotions we ignore, they don't go away. They sit and they fester and they rot. And to hold that pain within is to allow it to express itself in unwanted places in our lives. I watched as my life drifted from expressing all of my dreams, from living a life I loved and needed, in a height of my personal power, come crashing down, falling into the darkest night my soul has ever experienced in my lifetime. And I thought I had reached lows before that point. I was stuck so thoroughly in my mind and my headspace and my personal anxiety that I completely lost sight of my inner being. I lost sight of my heart. What had once felt like such a sure thing became a distant reflection of something so far from possible. Infinite possibility transformed into a large and resounding no. And no seemed to be the only answer in my life for some time. In hindsight, a year doesn't seem like such a long time. And with the gift of hindsight, I can see a kind of cyclical beauty to the whole experience. In November 2018, I was feeling some of the best I had ever felt. And in November 2019, I was feeling some of the worst. One period reflecting the other. My inability to let things die when they were done, my difficulty in saying goodbye and closing out a cycle, led to a deep inability to move forward. I locked myself out of living in the present moment. This is the paradox of suppressing our emotions. We push them aside out of fear of how they will hurt us, fear of facing the unknown. But sitting on the other side lies peace and tranquility and the release of letting it all go. By ignoring and repressing, we hold on to it. There is no peace. There is no resolution. And moving forward with our lives, it brings these things forward into our choices and our decisions. Every action becomes clouded by the emotions we never had the courage to face. Avoidance became a way of life for me. It quickly became my dominant personality trait. And every action I had to take, every choice I had to make, became utterly dominated by fear and indecision. All of this is now firmly in the past, and each of us has the power to transcend our past. We all have the power to exorcise old ghosts haunting us from within. With the courage to face the hidden emotions within me, I give myself the gift of release. Because hiding under the trauma and the hurt lies a deep connection to my inner strength and beauty. And running from that trauma instead of facing it head on means running from that deep inner connection as well. In the tarot, there are two cards representing change in our lives: the Death card and the Tower card. Both powerful and sometimes scary, but both equally transformative and important. Whereas the Death card comes to us as a radical transformation of our inner landscape, allowing us to become anew within our environment, the Tower brings with it a swift sweep of the whole world we know. The reality is, life keeps on moving into something else. Change is the only constant we have in this life. And in those times we want to dig in our heels and keep things the way that they are, the Tower comes in to crash that ideology down. And as the stubborn person that I am, lessons have had a way of coming in the hard way. But sometimes, the only way to learn how to play the game of life is turning the difficulty settings up to expert. And when we firmly embrace the challenges that life throws us and learn to face the hard times head on, we can break through it all and transform into a new being, move into a new beginning and brightness of being that comes from an awakening of the inner strength. After the Tower in the tarot comes the Star. Shining brightly, this star comes into our lives to show us that our inner truths, the North Star of all that we are, is there to guide us through any hardships and bring us into a new phase of living. I think one of the main reasons I became so enamored with you is that our connection and our work brought me closer to a part of myself that was yearning to be expressed. My inner North Star. The creative connection can feel like a personal channel into something massive, something so much larger than any one of us, or even the sum total of all of us. And this connection craves some kind of structure surrounding it, or at least I'm starting to learn it craves that kind of structure from me. And that's something I couldn't see as easily back when we were trying to make music. Open up a time and a place. Give it some kind of regular dimension to flow through and practice being connected. It doesn't help to just think of it every once in a while, to stumble upon it at random periods. It wants some form of regularity. Water the seeds every day and they will grow. With practice and dedication, anyone can create. Because the creative force is a natural part of being alive as a human being. All people were born to dance, and you don't have to teach a child how to do it before they get up and move to the beat. So, I'll just come out and say it. I love you, Max. These were important words that could have freed me from all of this a long time ago, but I couldn't bring myself to say them. I was too afraid of the answer, too scared that it would ruin what we were building together. And that was the past. I'm ready to let it all go and move on with my life. I love you, and I release you, and I open up my heart to the new day. Forever your friend, JP.
I loved it. All right, let me just do a couple things here.
All right. Well, let me just say right away that it's such a beautiful film. And I mean, the poetic language, the metaphors, the introspection, it was really spectacular. It's a piece, it's a work of art. And I've seen it a couple times now, and I like it more each time I see it. And I'm really excited for you for making this. And thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for those kind words.
Of course.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the origin of the project and why did you decide to express your feelings through a short film?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many layers to this project. It's crazy. So I feel like the end product definitely expresses everything I needed to say. But it started out in a part of the film, it features a song of this band that I was in with my friend Max, who I had feelings for a long time. And I didn't really know how to express that. And kind of when that band project ended, I was writing at the time I wanted to write an album of music to try to kind of sort through feelings. And I had a song that was kind of trying to express what I ultimately expressed in the film. But I definitely found that music eventually I couldn't say everything I wanted to say. You know, music is very limited in that it can be really beautiful and poetic, but I just had too much to say. And yeah, so then I had filmed a music video for that song with a friend of mine, Brandon Clark, who did the cinematography in this. Yeah, and so I had all of this footage for a music video for a song that ultimately I wasn't really happy with. It wasn't really kind of coming together the way I wanted. So I was just sitting on all of this. And so then kind of when the pandemic hit, you know, it was kind of like a really great opportunity for me to go through all of this introspection. And like, you know, I feel like I had been going through a lot of really complicated emotions and didn't really know what was going on. You know, it's hard for me to kind of express all of that. So I used it as an opportunity to kind of like merge together some like journals and feelings I was having with the footage that I had on hand. And it all kind of came together in this really beautiful film.
I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it came together really, really well. Absolutely. It looks like we have a question.
Here, I'll get it.
Comments. Yeah. Over to you, Chris.
Yeah. So this is a question from Alyssa Adams. Beautiful film. She asks, what was the significance of having the imagery of you in nature during the voiceover in the beginning? And did you have one specific moment where inspiration struck and you decided to create this film, or Was there a longer period of consideration before making it? It's a great question, Alyssa.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching. So I kind of answered the second part of your question already. But I think the nature was sort of, I kind of always find myself going back to nature in general. And that particular park in general is a park called Interlaken Park here in Seattle that I go to a lot. And actually, like, I definitely find walking through the woods really kind of helps me kind of come back into myself and like even be able to think about certain things. And so I wanted to use that park in particular as sort of a place to express me moving through that narration, almost as like to represent sort of what I do anyway, kind of going there and then allowing that to be a time to think and a time to process certain things. So it was sort of a visual representation of that.
Cool.
Man, I wish I could visit that park. It looks fantastic.
It's beautiful. So the city of Seattle has these like really incredible parks that as the city was developing, they were just plots of land owned by wealthy individuals that had never been developed. And then they donated them to the city of Seattle early on in gained protection status. So it's almost like these like forests in the middle of the urban city. It's pretty incredible.
That's
great.
Yeah, that was such a great backdrop, whether to use it for a movie or a video or both. Yeah, fantastic. I actually have a question. You saved naming Max until the very end of the film, which I thought was a really powerful and interesting choice. So what made you decide to save that to the end?
Well, I think I wanted to leave it as open as possible throughout the whole film. And in fact, I didn't even really know whether I wanted to call him out at all or not. But then I sort of realized as I was writing it, it had this very like letter quality to it. And so, yeah, I felt like I wanted to, I don't know. It just kind of came out that way. Yeah.
It's very brave. Yeah, it really worked well. I do have a follow-up in that particular vein. Was the masked man in the bar meant to represent Max, yourself, or something else?
Kind of a little of both, actually. Definitely. But I think that, yeah, he was sort of representing Max, but also kind of like representing the fantasy version of Max that I had kind of built, because like I kind of alluded to it in the film that I had built up this sort of imagined future,
Yeah.
And sort of a huge part of, I think, what was blocking me for such a long time was realizing like that had all been untrue, it wasn't real. It was just kind of here. And then kind of like trying to reconcile that, it kind of became this, that like it was this fantasy. And so this sort of like masked person kind of really represented that very well for me.
Yeah, I loved that aspect.
I loved it too. And if anyone else in the audience has a question, certainly send them in. You kind of answered my next question a little bit, but it really was that same thing. That theme that kind of ran through your film was the idea that it's easy, perhaps, make the mistake of spending too much time or energy focused on the idea of something in the future at the expense of truly enjoying the moments that we're in today. And it spoke to the downsides of delaying communication until this mythical time in the future. And do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's such a huge part of kind of what I'm working with right now. I mean, I think we all kind of are in a lot of ways, but like, I think that, that's one thing that I've been really grateful for with this pandemic, surprisingly enough, is just the opportunity to really like have to come back to the present, because all of these future things are so, ephemeral, like they're not real. And so especially like, I definitely found for myself that, yeah, I was very much living in the future. And I think that, I suffered from depression for a really long time. And I think that was a huge part of it, was that like trying to reconcile the fact that, I had built up something so huge that wasn't real. And so, you know, when when that becomes impossible, like you kind of have to do some soul searching, you know?
Right.
Well,
So,
yeah, I love how you tie that to the tarot, cards. The whole, everything has to tumble down, the whole facade that we've built for ourselves, and sweep it all aside, as you said, so that you can start over. Yeah, that's very poignant and exactly speaks to exactly what you were saying. Going back to the music, do you have any formal music training, or are you a self-taught artist?
I do have some music training. I definitely, I mean, nothing beyond just playing for years in school. But I did self-teach. I taught myself how to write music. Probably
That is an amazing accomplishment.
Cool. That's really
Writing
cool.
music is so hard.
Yeah, well, it's just like I kind of took away some of the. I feel like music writing has a huge. There's like a big barrier that we all kind of put it under, you know? And so I tried to take a lot of that out for myself by just kind of exploring stuff. And I've always kind of I have what's called relative pitch. So it's not like perfect pitch where I can hear a note and say what it is, but I have the ability to hear when music like is together in a key or if it's not. So that kind of just allows me to play around with sound, like painting or something like that, you know, where you can just be really open to exploration and kind of mix things. And so, so I spent a lot of time just messing around with computer software, and most of the music writing I do is digital that way. So yeah, I kind of use this project too as a way to explore score writing, because that's something I'm really interested in and want to kind of work on more of. So yeah.
Well, I'm impressed on many levels. I don't have any pitch. I can't carry it in a bucket. So I really appreciate that, and how you can work with the software. Do you use actual instruments as well, and then you process it with the software?
Sometimes I kind of came back down to just using computers now. So the score for this film, for instance, is just computer software. And I was able to get this really great computer program that emulates the sound of a piano in a way that I think is really beautiful. And so I use that for this project, and I think that it kind of takes the music to a different level. Because it sounds like it has this like beautiful resonant sound, as if you were playing it live, which is pretty incredible. So
very nice. I love the music.
Yeah, it was all beautiful. Chris, you want to take that next guest question?
Yep, I was going to do it.
Yay, Hannah. Yes, Max did see the film. And we actually had like a really long, like 2-hour phone conversation after he saw it. And it was really nice. I mean, it was really great because, you know, first it was a chance to reconnect. Like, he had moved to New York City for about a year since when I released the project. He had been living in New York for about a year. And so we hadn't really talked that much since he moved. And it was a really good opportunity to kind of like reconnect and sort of talk about things, you know, and talk about the project and talk about where both of us were mentally and emotionally, you know. And I think that like it was interesting because, you know, talking about when we were together writing music, we were both kind of in this like really sort of depressed place from different parts of our lives and stuff like that. And so I think that, you know, that was a big part of potentially like why I became so enamored with him in the artistic process, you know. And making music together with somebody can be a very intimate experience. And so, you know, it was really nice and touching to reconnect, you know. And, you know, I think that we'll be lifelong friends, which is great. So yeah.
Fantastic. Great question, Hannah. Let's see. I would say life is good, but it could be better. But in the ideal world, what would you want your audience to take away from this film?
I think, you know, I think the biggest thing, and it strikes me just, it's been a while since I've seen this actually, so it was kind of really fun for me to watch this again. And one of the biggest takeaways that I take from it even now is sort of this idea that it's twofold. It's like the idea that you can get really hung up on unprocessed emotions. It's really easy. It's really easy to just try to ignore your feelings instead of feeling them. But then also this idea that like you can come out of it, you know, that like if you're in a place where you feel really depressed or you're really stuck in something and you don't, you know, I think for the biggest part of it is like, I didn't realize that this was the thing that was really keeping me stuck. You know, I just felt stuck, and I didn't understand what was going on. And so it was really kind of, I'm really happy I gave myself the outlet and the time and the space to kind of untie all of the tangles, you know, going on inside and figure it all out in general. So, you know, I think the biggest takeaway I would say from this is, you know, don't be afraid to do that kind of work, and that like there is a light at the end of the tunnel of that kind of thing, especially if you're in depression or you're feeling depressed. There is another side to it, and you can work through things. That is possible. Yeah.
Cool. Well, are you working on anything currently, or what's your next project looking like?
So I don't have any huge film projects in the works at the moment, but I'm currently, tarot is a big part of this film. And it's something that I've been exploring just on my own anyway. And so right now I'm actually producing my own tarot deck. So that's something I'm working on. Yeah, and that's been really fun using a printmaking method. So that's kind of the biggest project I'm doing right now.
Fantastic. Well, that's very, very cool. Thanks. So we're just about out of time, but thanks so much for joining us today. I hope the people who got to see your film loved it. I mean, like I said, I saw it about a month ago and I loved it right away. And just one of those things that we wanted to try to get more people to see if we could. And so this was really great. Thanks for coming in and sharing your thoughts on it. It's so rare that you get an actual opportunity to talk with the creator of something like this and really get at what that person is trying to get to communicate.
Exactly. So much wonderful advice in healing processes and catharsis in that. And it was amazing. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me on to this and showing the film. I'm really grateful for you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, we will be back next month on February 28th. We've got a filmmaker from Texas by the name of Hebrews Campbell, who's got a new film that he hopes to show at some festivals later this spring. And until then, thanks for joining us and have a great month. Bye-bye.
Bye.